Great, everybody. My name is Lakshmi Iyer. I'm with Grameen Foundation, a nonprofit organization that's been operating for over 30 years. I'll be talking today about digital advisory services for smallholder farmers, primarily surrounding the 5-year action research program that just concluded. It's called AgPath. And I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Mark and the rest of our AMEA colleagues for the opportunity to present some of our findings. We hope that they're relevant. And over the next few minutes, I hope to provide some of our research findings and explain how the findings about digital advisory services could be a useful entry point into the world, the rapid world that we see emerging where smallholder farmers and AI are now intersecting. So AgPath was a 5-year action research project that was established with Swiss and German development funding to identify, examine, and promote effective models of delivering digital advisory services on sustainable agriculture or sustainable land management practices. And that's important to note because it's not your typical good agricultural practices or GAP advisory services. This is specifically around regenerative agriculture, land management practices that are regenerative in nature that are being pulled out of a database, a global database called WOCAT. And that's important and critical to kind of highlight here because we are moving into the realm where there is a lot more conversation around business development services and providing a lot more of nuanced kind of regenerative agricultural practice services for smallholder farmers and others. So AgriPath was in 5 different countries, as you can see from the map. We were in West and East Africa and South Asia as well. Let's spend a minute unpacking how AgriPath defined digital advisory services. It's a word I'm going to be using a lot, acronym, I guess, DAS. And DAS here is digital advisory services. The DAS within AgriPath was largely smartphone-based DAS. So this is mobile-based applications. This is also critical to kind of highlight because other DAS such as IVR and USSD don't always require as much infrastructure. The app-based DAS does require a smartphone, and only a fraction of smallholder farmers in low-income settings have access to smartphones, as we all know. There are approximately 750 digital advisory services in sub-Saharan Africa alone, and we only see a 10% adoption rate of those DAS across the farmers in sub-Saharan Africa. So it's really low at the moment. And there are a lot of challenges, and you can see the slide here, but they relate back to everything that we know to be true, which is that infrastructure includes non-digital rails that are non-existent, basically. Content is not localized enough, the affordability issue, and it's just a basic lack of smallholder farmer consumer readiness, such as literacy, let alone digital literacy and ownership of mobiles. So we know these challenges to be true. We conducted our own surveys in AgriPath geographies to understand smartphone access. And we found, again, this to be very true in the sense that access to smartphones was quite high amongst youth in the South Asian countries that we were working in, Nepal and India, amongst smallholder farmers in Uganda and Burkina Faso. It was very low. But, for all of the reasons we just discussed. But it was good to validate it and ensure that we understood that before we kind of move forward with the broader research. AgriPath also really wanted to understand women farmers. And it's really clear women farmers face additional challenges when it comes to scaling digital advisory services. There's lower mobile phone ownership. There are fewer female community-based agents or CBAs, and we'll be talking a lot about CBAs in the upcoming slides. Or there are extension programs in existence today, but most of them target only those who own land, and most often that's not really women. So AgPath was an action research project really trying to understand what are these challenges, how does it affect various different segmented groups, but also trying to understand what modalities would be the most effective in channeling or delivering DAS for smallholder farmers. And so we had the opportunity to conduct 2 randomized control trials, one in India and one in Uganda. And the objective really was to determine the best mode or channel of delivering DAS to smallholder farmers. So the first modality, we called it self-service or farmer self-service, where only the farmer had the application, where the farmer was viewing sustainable land management practices on a proxy application. The second modality was a hybrid, where the agent had the application and the smallholder farmer also had the application, and they were able to interact on the application if need be. And there was also an agent-only type of modality where the agent had the application and was responsible for relaying the information to smallholder farmers. And through the randomized control trial in India, we found, and it's probably very common sense to everybody, that the hybrid model was the most effective. So this was where the agent had the mobile, the farmer had the mobile, they were interacting through the mobile, they were interacting through the app on the sustainable land management practices. And we know that, through this, the hybrid model was the most effective, and DAS are really most effective when they complement an in-person agent-based extension service, especially when it comes to, adopting these new types of sustainable land management practices. The agents are often from the community, and so they're trusted, and the smallholder farmer therefore trials the sustainable land management practice more readily, but also due to repeated contact with the agents. So CBAs are important, these community-based agents, and with apps like these, they can reduce their own workload and their own burden, and scale out messaging to farmers through this hybrid approach. The question as to whether DAS can be effective and lead towards increased farmer awareness and adoption of sustainable land management practices has essentially now been put to rest through this research, which is really great. One thing to notice is that in Uganda, with the randomized control trial, there was a variation from what India kind of found, and that the DAS was most effective when it was a self-service model. But there is an important note here that the role that the community-based agents played in Uganda was to onboard the farmers and support them to use the app if asked. So it's important to note this because community-based agents are crucial, even in self-service scenarios, because there was an initial in-person training, and farmers often sought out the community-based agent in person, even because of the content on the app, what was unclear or oftentimes confusing. We know that access can't be equated with having a phone. We talked about this already. And we also know that merely providing information doesn't increase incomes. And we really need a bundled set of services that are being provided. And DAS works best when when DAS is combined with these other services. So agents that are part of a wider network of business development providers and are known by smallholder farmers in their communities often do better and have more job security when that actually takes place. Lastly, with the advent of AI, artificial intelligence, we take these research findings into that realm, and we're trying to mesh it with other research that's being undertaken at the moment globally with other AI-enabled applications. And what we're suggesting is that AI-enabled DAS does really need community-based agents just as much as non-AI-enabled DAS does. Now, raises questions about the importance of the challenges that we discussed earlier on in the presentation. We know that community-based agents bring trust, local context. They really can deepen behavior change. They can even inspire inclusion. But we also know that artificial intelligence, as we see it at the moment, can bring a lot to smallholder farmers. It can be transformative, and it has been so far. We see precision at a personalized level, content generation at a large scale. If AI chatbots are done right, there's local language enablement and potentially lower costs to provide the DAS. But our hypothesis is that the future of DAS can't simply be digital first alone, and really needs to be amplified by human networks that probably already exist. The challenges that we were talking about earlier when it comes to smartphone penetration and gender inclusivity will still remain, and these are challenges that will get probably amplified as AI gets deployed for smallholder farmers at scale. And it requires a lot more conversation and deeper thinking. Sure, AI can possibly alleviate community-based agents' workload, but farmers do need some access to these smartphones, considering the hybrid works better than agent only. When it comes to gender inclusivity, we see that even groups that are deploying AI for smallholder farmers at scale at the moment find it really challenging to ensure that women smallholder farmers are able to be reached. To further understand how DAS can scale, we actually put together a few toolkits. I guess we can call them knowledge products. This DAS scaling framework and a DAS toolkit that I'll talk about in the next slide. But DAS succeed at a pilot stage, we know, and very few of them manage to scale. And Mark mentioned scaling at the very start of this learning event. Scaling is really the only way that we can unlock the full potential of DAS. And this framework that we've put together really targets governments and other ecosystem players to help secure and address some of these core barriers to scaling DAS. This tool, along with the DAS toolkit, will be placed on the AMEA website so that others can leverage these resources. This AgPath DAS toolkit is really designed to support DAS stakeholders and help DAS stakeholders scale. It really there's an emphasis on community-based agents and how that agent network can deliver scalable, sustainable DAS. There's also emphasis on gender inclusion. Both the scaling framework and the DAS toolkit really center in on scaling DAS and doing it in a way that leverages a community-based agent network. This is just some content for the AgPath toolkit. I won't read anything on this slide, but just to give you a taster as to what it's all about. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. I hope this was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lakshmi. I think it was really good to hear, the results from sort of 5 years of research, randomized controlled trials. I mean, we clearly should take this evidence very seriously, and I think you said it very clearly there. There's certain questions we've been asking that have been put to rest now. So I hope people will use the DAS toolkit, look at sort of scaling strategies, and obviously, there's still some work to figure out what are the best scaling strategies in each context. But yeah, you certainly, with the research base that you've given and the toolkit, you've certainly given people a leg up to try and solve these problems. So we're more than happy to host the toolkit and promote it for the benefit of the whole community. So thanks, Lakshmi.